Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Tiger Nexus podcast. Or welcome as this is your first time. I really hope everyone is doing well. Today, I'm joined by Jay, also known as Drunken Dragonheart, on social media. He is the host, the writer, and creator of the YouTube channel called Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Universe 3072 audio drama. It's a YouTube channel very similar to the likes of what myself and Cosplay2637 does, where he writes his own fan fictions and turns them into audio dramas. He does do it slightly different to us, though. His work seems to be a bit more well tuned with sound effects. He does seem to have the sound effects on point. He does get artwork done for all of his work as well. It was fun talking to Jay. I did enjoy my time talking to Jay very much. The audio did cut out actually for a little while on this one. I believe Jay's side of things may not have been perfect. I know I mention this at every single episode. I just like to warn people, but this time I generally had a problem. But it's fine though, you know, if you guys can get past it, then that's cool too. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoy this episode. So yeah, this is me talking with Jay, the host of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Universe 3072, the audio drama, and we also talk about his comic book. And yeah, I'm gonna have to have Jay on again because he has so much to talk about. I just didn't have time to. I didn't have the time this time around, you know. So yeah, let's dive in with today's episode.
Welcome to the Tiger Nexus podcast, a place where you'll find interviews with content creators and geeks alike. Your host, Tiger, has delved upon the Nexus and found interesting content creators and geeks of all fandoms. This podcast is connected to the Zero Hero Network. And now, we dive in with another episode!
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tiger Nexus podcast. Today, we are joined by a voice actor of mine. He voice acts on the Tiger Tales channel, and he also does his own work, which is actually really, really fantastic if you listen to it. So I'm joined by Jay. Hi, Jay, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, boy. Thank you very much for coming on to the podcast. Explain exactly what you've been doing on YouTube so far.
All right. So about a year or two ago, I think it's like 2 now, I started the J Dragonheart Fandom Multiverse Initiative. I had the idea to not only do my own version of certain fan projects, but I wanted them to be shared within the fandom, like a multiverse kind of, for those who wanted to connect themselves to it, or in general, every show I came out with was connected anyway via multiverse. I started with my, I guess, pilot shows, which was Mighty Morphin and Beetleborgs, but my version of them, which was the Universe 3072 variants of those projects.
Well, when it comes to what you've released so far, I really enjoy listening to them. I think they're good. You can definitely tell you've put time and effort into everything. There's sound effects. There's the voice acting's really good. Your Finster voice actor is just on peak. I don't know about what you think, but your Finster voice actor is just phenomenal.
Oh, of course.
That's me, by the way. If anyone's wondering, I'm Finster. Actually, because of you, because I got to be your Finster, I'm now Finster for Mark the Red Corner Stranger. I'm like Finster in almost everything. If Finster's in a comic book that he's adapting, I'm Finster.
Well, that's good. I'm glad I could influence that.
Yeah, definitely. So I want to talk about your Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Universe 3072. You don't have. You've decided to go down a different route. You don't have the same dino powers as the original team. So can we break down the dinosaurs you have?
Yeah, sure. I'll even give a brief synopsis on why I made that decision.
Yeah. That would have been my next question. So yeah, you break down and give us why you went that way.
For sure. So, I wanted a different take on Mighty Morphin because the concept of the multiverse, right, is that everything happens similarly or hardly at all, right? Like in DC, for instance, that there's literally a universe where there's a bunch of Looney Tune like animals that are heroes and not Superman in them. Completely different people, you know?
Yep.
So I thought about it and I was like, well, what if there was a situation in the multiverse where Mighty Morphin happened, but it wasn't the same people or powers or situations, or they were similar, but not quite, you know? And because of the way the multiverse works, that was just a possibility. So I was like, oh, cool. So I don't have to take characters that people already love and make a version of them they don't like. I can just make my own characters and see if they fall in love with them. So that's what I aimed to do. I wanted to make my own version of Mighty Morphin that didn't touch the original source material as much as possible, but still kind of did to pay homage, you know?
Yeah.
So I picked as different dinos as I could in colors that just weren't utilized as much um, or at all. So, for instance, the color brown, man, when I really thought about it, I was like, dude, that's like the most underused color in everything.
Oh yeah.
Like no one ever uses that color for anything color oriented when it comes to shows. And if they do, it's a mockery. It's like a parody. And I wasn't cool with that. You know, I was like, man, I don't know. Brown's not that bad. I mean, you know, I did some research and I found out people don't like brown because they associate it with like, you know, the number two situation.
Yeah.
And I just think that's like childish. You know, it's like a very childish notion. That's the only reason why they never use it. So I started with that color and picked my favorite dinosaur, which is a Baryonyx, and made the brown Baryonyx Ranger because it fits so well. Because Baryonyx is already kind of brown.
Yeah, very
And
true.
then from there,
Yeah, Karen.
hello,
Hello.
can you hear me?
Yeah, you good?
What? Oh, you sure?
Yeah.
Okay. So from there, I picked a Stegosaurus because a lot of people like Stegosaurus. I picked a Dilophosaurus because I was watching Jurassic Park at the time when I was thinking about this, and I just found a Dilophosaurus to be really cool and very fitting for the Green Ranger that I chose. Now, green is something that was done before, but I will argue that green was more so a color that was the extra Ranger situation. It was never a permanent staple character beforehand, if that makes sense. Like it wasn't like a main character. So it was valid to me, you know. But I made my Stegosaurus purple, and then I chose two other colors that, well, one color that's never used hardly except for a little bit, which was orange, and I picked a raptor because everyone likes raptors. Everyone likes raptors as much, almost as much as they like T-Rexes, you know. And then I was like, man, what should my fifth ranger be? And I was like, well, people do like long necks, like they like Brachiosauruses or Brontosauruses and stuff like that. I mean, Land Before Time is a testament to that. So um, I decided to go with a Brachiosaurus similar to Titanus almost, and made him white because again, white wasn't a main color; it was more of like an auxiliary sixth, seventh ranger situation. So that was my team, and I was pretty satisfied with it. It seemed like a very cohesive unit. I mean, even
You good?
yeah,
Yeah, cool. Well, when it comes to what's out so far, because as of recording this, we're recording this at the end of March. You've only got part 0 and the beginning of part 1, right?
yeah, the pilot and then episode one,
Yeah.
part one of episode one. Yeah.
And
I
so far they're really good. I really enjoyed listening to them. Like I said, they're
thank
really
you.
well done and made. And you can see why it takes you a while to put it together.
Oh yes, unfortunately. So the reason why they're in parts, right, Uh, I only have time to work on so long, and every time I work on one, it ends up being about 25 minutes of footage before I'm just like, you know what, I need to push out content. So I've decided to make sure each episode was just kind of halved. It gives the episode a little bit of like views while I'm working on the second half, you know? So it was kind of like a good idea. It was like a happy accident. But the reason why it takes me so long, unfortunately, is because I don't have a PC. So
Ah.
I have to go visit my friend who has one and then utilize it to make episodes. And I only visit him once a week. So you can see how like I'm very time crunched between hanging out with my friend and trying to make sure I get a lot of stuff done. You know?
Yeah, that's a fair statement. Yeah, that's very true. Um, was
Correct that
he's
I need like the lines and
yeah.
people if they need to redo them because everyone's got different schedules and things to do. So
Yeah.
between that and having to collect everything I need and also writing the entire episode myself and only myself and making sure it's cohesive, it's narratively good, and I'm happy with it. It just is a long process, man.
Yeah, it definitely does take a while. I also upload stories on YouTube and stuff like that. I sometimes I have voice actors. I do actually have a lot of stories of voice actors, but sometimes it is just me, and sometimes when it's just me, it still takes a while. You know, I'm currently doing the crossover of all of the Marvel and DC storylines of like your one up character and stuff like that, and it's taking forever. It's taking forever. It's been going on for about almost a year now. It's just like insane. And
Right.
like you're saying about you don't have a PC. There's one of my friends. He also uploads stories on YouTube, and he does a lot of Power Rangers crossing over with horror stuff. So he's done Friday the 13th. That was really good, but he does it all on his phone. He edits
Right.
everything, and it burns his battery as well. Like he's told me before that, like if he edits on his phone, it's really hard to do. Like he struggles to get everything in place, and if he's got lines, he's got to put in as well. But like, yeah, he says it burns his phone a lot as well, like the battery on his phone. So
Yeah, I get that. Actually, believe it or not, the first pilot episode, part one, was done on my phone. But unfortunately, when I had made part one of the pilot back then on my phone, it fried it and it crashed the app I was on, and it just ruined almost all the footage, and I had to redo it again and hope that it didn't crash or glitch. So I don't. It's just like too much, I guess, RAM or memory or I'm not sure what goes on with that, but certain phones just can't do it, man. You know?
yeah, for sure. I have a decent phone. My phone officially came out last year, but I don't think it better handle all the editing my PC can do.
Right, exactly. So I'm really sorry to anybody out there that listens to my stuff. It's just anticipatingly waiting. I am working on it. It just takes me a long time because I'm only having one day and maybe less than 8 hours to work on it. So,
Yeah, I understand the frustration, and you have this whenever whoever listens to your stuff will understand what I mean, but you've definitely got this, I don't know, I want to say uniqueness of your stories, because there's sound effects, there's like your narrator's really good. You've had this conversation privately with me about your narrator. I really like the way that he does your stories. But like
oh
you
yeah,
said,
Chris
you're
is
you're
great.
also taking a twist on everything, because your villain isn't Rita Repulsa, is it? It's not the witch that got trapped. It's your own take on that as well, isn't it?
Oh yeah. So inevitably, because of the multiverse theory, I also took liberties to gender bend some characters, and I know some people hate that, but I risked it anyway. And I gender bent Rita because I have seen a female Tommy in Unworthy in other media, like like Amy Jo Johnson's new comic, where she had like that descendant, right? There's
Yeah.
always been like different versions of every character, and sometimes it has been a gender bend situation, but yet nobody seemed to do it too often. I think it's because out of like maybe they just didn't want to not hit with the backlash of it, or I don't know. But regardless, I felt like Rita deserved a male equivalent in the multiverse because a fun thing. When I thought about this, I became more and more in love with the idea because Rita, she's like a person who was taken by her father, Master Vile, in order to serve Dark Spectre, and was altered, and she was always destined for more. We saw that with the Mystic Mother, right? But she has magic, and she's corrupted, and she's this and that, and she does the same thing to Tommy, right? So I always kind of felt like if there ever was a male equivalent, for the morbid irony's sake, I wanted the male equivalent to feel a lot like Lord Draken or Tommy, because, birds of a feather, she chose someone who reminded her of herself. And what's really fascinating about that is in the comics of Boom Studios, Lord Draken does become something like Rita. When he loses his powers, he still has magic because he learned how to use magic from Rita. And he ends up being like this, venturing space wizard that's evil, which just reminds me of Rita. So Tommy became the very thing that groomed him in the first place, and I like that concept. So I like the idea that if there is a male Rita in the multiverse, she is eerily similar to Lord Draken in that aspect.
Yeah, that's really cool. I like the design of him as well. He seems really cool. And if you listen to the part one of your first episode, I think that's you voice acted really well. There's a scene with Finster and him where like he kind of storms in and almost kills him, and Finster's like, no, hang on, I've got something else. And like, there's a drastic tone difference to him saying, right, I'm going to kill you because you're wasting my time. To, well, okay, this might work, Finster. Fair enough, I'll take it. There's a drastic change. So you can definitely tell that like he's on the similar path of Rita, because Rita Repulsa also did that in the Power Ranger TV show and in the comic books, where she's screaming at Finster and Golden 1 minute, but then she's like, well, okay, maybe this might work, maybe it won't, but we'll give it a go. So you've definitely captured Rita's being a villain, being a bitch to everybody, but then she'll give everyone a second chance because it's kind of the main villain's job too, and it's also very Rita-like, and I think every villain that's come after Rita's also followed it, so you've definitely captured Rita Repulsa. You just made it male, so you've done that pretty well.
Oh yeah. Even if, even though, correct myself, even though I'm doing a different spin on something everyone loves, I still wanted to put as much love to Mighty Morphin as possible with my homages, it's definitely inspired by the source material it comes from. It's just different, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Which, by the way, Lord Repulsa's first name, for those who may not have caught it because it was in the recent episode, his name is Retox. Retox Repulsa. If just to
Yeah,
be
that's cool.
transparent with that.
I like the name. So you've also got Finster. Is there any difference between your Finster and then the Finster that everyone else knows?
Oh yeah, you can already tell if you ever pause the video during the intro sequence of the audio drama, and you see Finster's art, you can already see that this Finster is drastically different. Yes, he still facially and bodily looks the same, but he looks more like a mad scientist mixed with an alchemist. He's got like potions everywhere on his suit. He's got his own like potion staff. I don't know. This Finster is more to the point. He's more willing to be useful to Retox. He fears him, sure, that's a similar vibe, but this Finster is more devious than the other one. Like I'd like to argue that previous Finster from the classic show, he was more so just kind of there to serve Rita because he feared her. I never really noticed that Finster was anything but kind of like a more of a victim than anything. He never seemed very evil to me, you know. But in my audio drama, he's actually leaning more into the evil aspect of, in a pilot episode, Finster screws over Goldeath because he pretends like he doesn't hear Goldeath's transmission when he's asking for aid. That's a good example. Finster hates Goldeath. They have a weird rivalry situation going on, and he'll do anything it takes to kill off Goldeath while it seems like an accident. So this Finster, in my opinion, he's different because he actually feels evil.
Yeah, I see what you mean as well, because you just said that Finster doesn't seem evil in the TV show or anything. Well, if you remember in the Year of the Dragon book where Tommy's like older and he has the Master Morph and stuff, Finster's actually his ally now. He actually like helps out Tommy with some of the problems that happens in that comic book.
Exactly.
So he definitely, I wouldn't call him an anti-hero, that's the wrong word. But he's evil because he has to, not because he wants to.
A victim of circumstance.
Yeah, but then where you're going down it's a case of he's evil because he wants to.
Yeah. Yeah. He still feels like Finster, he's just actually evil this time.
So when it comes to Goldar, which is obviously what everyone knows and loves, you've actually done a different take on Goldar as well, which I think I really like the artwork for your Goldar character. I'll let you explain that as well, because I think it's cool.
Oh yeah, Goldeath, man. I renamed my version Goldeath because sometimes the multiverse people have different titles or names, and Goldeath just sounded really cool and edgy, you know? Very 90s edge. And I took inspiration from his already physique. There was a lot of debate that is he a sphinx, is he a lion, is he a this or that? But I honestly believe he's a manicore. And manicores are really kind of both. They're kind of like a lion, human, sphinx, scorpion, bat thing. Like they're like a hybrid. And Goldeath or Goldar even kind of matches that aspect. I think he's actually a manicore because he has like a spiked tail situation going on in certain places of his body, like as dreads, but also near his waist. So I'm thinking he's a manicore. So I went with the fact that he's a manicore in my stuff, and I took inspiration from that look because manicores obviously have wings. He's got wings. But the armor itself, so I wanted him to look really cool, and I was really struggling with how to make Goldar look cooler than what he already looks like, because Beast Morphers did that. They made, Goldar Maximus or whatever, which is really epic looking. And I was like, man, I don't know how I'm going to top that, And even classic Goldar looked really cool too. So I decided to take inspiration from Dragon Ball Z. Cooler's transformation beyond his true form, like his final form, from his movie, it just looks so mint. And I was like, man, that would look really good on Goldar. And I was right, because Goldar had similar features when it comes to physique and the way his head's shaped. And I was like, man, actually, if you put a cool battle mask on Goldar, that would look awesome. And then from there, I was like, actually, yeah, this is starting to work. And then I drew the design concept, and I was like, oh, this is it right here. And then that's how I got Goldeath. Goldeath just is inspired by Cooler's awesome form that Frieza never does, and on top of just being very edgy in name, A lot of this story and these characters, though, by the way, it has a lot of background information that hasn't been explained in episode. Like Goldeath has a whole origin story on how he ends up with Retox. Him and Scorpina are actually in a relationship, believe it or not, in my universe, as an example. There's just a lot of behind the scenes information I haven't really confirmed or released yet. Just as a little side note with that.
Well, I mean, you're only on episode 1 technically still, aren't you? And like you said, you're very strict with time and everything. So, there's a lot of you got a lot of breathing room and a lot of time. And I think with Power Rangers works really easy. You can bend a lot of Power Rangers. With my main story, I never actually explained who the villain was. I did a lot with the villain, and I'm on, I think it was like chapter 20 or something like that, that I actually explained who the villain was, how he can do what he can do, and all this stuff. So it took me a while to actually get. I didn't actually know what the villain was until, like, who he was really, until I got to a chapter I'm sat thinking, I need to explain who the villain is. Let's actually think about it. So, you've got plenty of time to, do breathing room. You can always do a villain episode. That seems to be really popular with the audio stories that a lot of people are doing. People seem to really like it when people take their villains, whether it's Power Rangers or not. I've seen a few that aren't Power Rangers, but people seem to really like chapters where it's really villain orientated. And they focus just 1 or 2 episodes just on the bad guys. So you could always explain how Girl Death came to be, like with Revitox, and you should explain Finster if you wanted to, and stuff like that. You've got plenty of breathing room.
Oh yeah, I already have all the information written down on how it happens, why. It's how I build characters. I have to usually build everything about them from how they start and why they do what they do. I have everything already planned out and fleshed out. It helped me build the world that I made for the episodes, even because there's been history between Retox and Zordon in my universe, even just like Rita and Zordon prior to the source material that it was inspired from, that nobody knows about or how it came to be. They just kind of got thrown into a situation where Retox was revived from being put in a coffin for who knows how long, and Zordon has this unequivocally unyielding rage against this man, and nobody understands why, but I guess it doesn't matter because, oh man, fight sequence, I like the fact that the episodes caught people's attention despite me not releasing stuff like why,
See, this is the thing, as long as the story's good and you can explain things well and stuff like this. Sometimes explaining everything at once doesn't help, and sometimes dragging it on doesn't help. You've got to find a nice balance. So you did your pilot episode, which obviously explained a few things for us, and then that carried into your first episode. And like you said, it's split into 2 parts. So like you've given people breathing room, and yeah, you've done, because your fight scenes are very well done, and it's not a case of, you listen to it and you're sort of thinking, right, hurry up, get to the fight scene, on board now. It's because the stuff that is not fight scene is, like, fun to listen to as well. So you've done a nice balance. So eventually, when you do get to the point where you're explaining, I don't know, Gold Death, whatever it is you want to explain, people are actually going to be like, oh, hang on, yeah, let's learn about this. Because, you do it very well.
Well,
I don't know how well it's done on Mark's podcast, because obviously Mark also puts it on there for you. But people seem to be listening to it, and I think with YouTube's a very funny thing. YouTube's very picky. The algorithms changed over the years. I've been uploading onto YouTube on and off 8 years, and it's definitely changed in the 8 years I've done it. And it's definitely a case of they like consistency. And I gave myself a challenge in January where I stuck with 1 Power Ranger story that had a couple spin-offs, but it's the same universe. And I uploaded as much as I could in January. And I've never had more views ever before or ever since. And it's because I uploaded, I think it was like 15 videos in 1 month, or something like that. They're all connected and that jazz, all Power Rangers related, 1 or 2 Kamen Rider stuff. And they are the most consistent views I've gotten ever. So I'm like, well, that's never happening again because that was stressful, but okay, YouTube, sure. YouTube's a very finicky platform.
It is. Honestly, it is very hard to get views on there unless you make yourself a slave to a certain style of video creation. But I am actually very happy that my audio drama got the views it has so far. Because with the first pilot, part 1, it actually broke a couple hundred views. It was It was getting up there because I used to have a gaming channel, and I maybe got like 50 views in a month, you know, if I was lucky, and I usually like 10 or 11, you know. But with the audio drama, I ended up with like over 200 just for the pilot, and I was like, "Ooh, man!" And it was like less than a month. I was very excited. I mean, even so, when I dropped the new intro, the second version of the Mighty Morphin audio drama intro recently, it's broke over 800 views. I guess people really liked the theme that was slapped together and the visuals. So I was like, man, like that's more than I could ever ask for from YouTube because it's so scarce. You know,
Yeah.
slim pickings on that app.
Yeah, when it comes to YouTube, it's extremely finicky and it's very pushy. And I upload different content across the board. I've got different types of channels and stuff. This podcast goes on YouTube, and it's definitely hit and miss. It's definitely, and sometimes it makes no sense. And hopefully, maybe one day you'll better get yourself a PC or a way to edit more, so you can upload a bit more. Maybe, and maybe YouTube
Oh
will
man, dude,
like it.
I plan on it. It's just everything's so pricey nowadays just to
Oh yeah.
live, man. And on top of that, I have other things I have to fund that are in the works right now, and I chose that over getting a PC, unfortunately. But I mean, you juggle what you juggle in service of what you do. You know, I eventually will get a PC, and it will be a lot more consistent. But until then, just know that each episode part takes me roughly, I want to say the last episode I did, it took me like 3 or 4 Wednesdays to get done. So, at least over 20 man hours and episode half. So, I
Yeah,
really do.
no, that's fair. I do Parents Global, which is a combination story of me, Cosplay267, and Mark the Corn Stranger. And I'm the writer, I'm the editor, and I'm the one who kind of like builds the main foundation of it. They help me out a lot with different small things, but I'm the one who builds the videos. And there are myself, so there's at least 6 concurrent voice actors, and we all take turns voicing the episodic monster. So some people have 2 sets of lines. So we're talking 7 to 8 set of lines, and that takes me a good 6 to 8 hours to edit sometimes. I can imagine your stuff's more than me, so I can imagine that's a bit more as well. Yeah,
Yeah.
I can see that.
Oh yeah, like 20 or so man hours episode half. So it's not like I'm not putting my effort or like concentration into it. It just takes a long time and it's spread out, you know.
Yeah.
Um, I also took inspiration from something really hilarious on why I did my audio drama and the style I did. Um, I was on HBO Max, and now I think it's just called Max. But and I found this really weird show about Gotham, like Batman related. It was like Batman the Audio Adventures or whatever. And I was like, oh, okay. I guess I'll just listen to this while I'm cleaning house or something, you know? And I listened to it, and I was like, oh, it's an audio drama. Okay, cool, cool. And it had cool visuals, but it didn't just have voices or whatever. It also had sound effects and like music. And I was like, ooh, because usually when I hear someone reading off a book in an audio book or something, there's like some things going on sometimes, but it's never to the degree that I heard from that show. So I was like, that's what will make my audio drama stand out. Is it's going to be that kind of quality. I want the sound effects. I want to learn how to use them, make them, whatever. I want to know where I need to put music and how to, make everything cohesive. Like I thought, if I have more than just people talking, it'll catch people's attention. And you know what? I'm happy with that. I'm very glad for Batman Audio Adventures for inspiring me to go that kind of format with it, because it to me is the superior audio drama format. It just is the perfect combo. It is more work, but the result is worth it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, this is why, that sometimes people have podcasts or like YouTube video like what we do, make stories and upload them. Sometimes people are just lazy. Some people have just like no drive to get them there, and some people have time restraints. There's always a reason, but as long as, in my personal opinion, as long as you still keep that drive, you don't let the fact that you can only edit on a Wednesday affect you of any kind. As long as you keep that drive, people are going to see it. It's going to get noticed eventually. YouTube's a waiting game. Actually, making content in general is a waiting game. You can put on Spotify and it's still a waiting game.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So again, I've listened to the three main things you've uploaded. So that's the pilot episode, the first half of the first episode, and your Beetleborg. And I really love your Beetle. I think your Beetleborg was my favorite one that you've uploaded. The way you did that was just really good. Out of the three. So do you want to explain what you've done with Beetleborg? So obviously, Beetleborg is a thing that tried to be the next Power Rangers, epically failed, and now barely gets mentioned. So do you want to kind of tell us what you're doing with that?
Sure. To transition to Beetleborgs, before I do, I also have the other half of the episode written already, narratively and voice line wise, on top of two other episodes after that entirely written for
Nice.
Mighty Morphin. Like I have all that stuff already ready to go. It's just the making this stuff is halting me, is all the way that I do. But so on to Beetleborgs. So I wanted Beetleborgs to have more limelight because, like you said, nobody expected it to really go much further than it did. And that's unfortunate. And Saban's issue, like it's kind of an issue with him because, he's famous for cutting corners and not understanding his own demographic. So, and he's cheap. But I'm gonna stop slandering that man. He's already slandered himself plenty. But Beetleborgs, it has potential. It still does, and it always will. Beetleborgs was a really cool concept on paper. The Metal Heroes series that he took inspiration from to make the characters and whatnot were really cool looking. And there was a lot of good things about it. It's just he leaned too far into the cheese, I think. Like he
Yeah.
really wanted that to appeal to kids more than even Power Rangers did, like arguably. And boy, did it suffer for it. Just Ghost Elvis, like I know that's not what he is, but he just reminded me of like Ghost Elvis and their mentor. And I was like, oh, he's like the main problem with this show. Like a lot of the kooky characters were the problem. It could have been a lot better if it was just a little bit more serious, if it was taken a little bit more seriously. So I wanted Beetleborgs to have like a reboot, but my own version because it desperately needed it more than Mighty Morphin did. And all I had to do was just treat it like Power Rangers, but with a different property, a different Ameritoku kind of way of doing things. So that's what I have done. I just told a really good story with what was already there, but added upon it the best I could. Because when you take Beetleborgs and you remove all the cheese, there was so much cheese, you really left with hardly anything. So it was very moldable to whatever I wanted to do with it. And I did just that. I felt like making it a very serious situation would actually make it more fascinating to fans who loved the original show but wanted it to be more. And the Magnivores taking over Earth made sense. If the Magnivores take over Earth, because of one man's mistake, that is one hell of a, opposing stakes. Like, the antagonist really is interesting at that point because the Earth's already sieged. What are you supposed to do about that? A lot of people like apocalyptic rebellion stories, and that
Yeah,
fits
very
a
true. Yeah.
Beetleborg format really well. Especially when you think about the fact that people love Lord Draken and his Shattered Grid story, which was an apocalyptic thing. People love Mad Oh, people loved RPM for that same reason. Pretty much RPM to Beetleborgs.
Fair. So do your Beetleborg storyline and your current Power Ranger storyline, are they taking place like on the same planet, like on the same universe, or are they like separate universes?
So, okay. I like the particular multiverse theory that goes like this. You could have multiple timelines to one universe, right?
Yes.
But you can't have multiple universes to a timeline.
Yep.
Because a timeline branches from being messed with time from that universe, right? Like you live in that universe, you mess with time. So now you created an alternate reality of that universe via timeline, right? Verse because it makes sense, you know?
Yeah.
So that's what I went with. Beetleborgs is the same universe, but an alternate timeline. So like universe get a little bit more technical.
So, um, with your okay, so you're doing different timelines and stuff. When it
Well,
comes,
the
sorry.
reason being the creature in the pilot that made the deal with the guy, right?
Yep.
Um, it is the secret to why it's the thing that messed with time. It's the reason why that show exists and why it spawned off of my Mighty Morphin story. So
I like it. I think that's
someone,
cool. Yeah, I like
yeah,
it. So
someone definitely messed with time. So
when it comes to your Beetleborg storyline, are you gonna like? Are you gonna take inspiration from the Metal Hero series, or are you gonna do what you've done with Power Rangers and kind of pay as much homage as you wanna, but while sticking with like your own thing?
I'm gonna keep doing the second thing you said because um I like paying homage and everything, but I'm confident in my creativity to make a compelling story with what I can come up with. And honestly, it hasn't really failed me yet. So I was always very confident that I could do stories with other properties. It's just a matter of should I, you know? But
Yeah.
I think that you love every story I've ever written so far with every episode. Um, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, you know? So
Yeah,
I'm
fair enough.
gonna just keep doing what I'm doing with my own take on things because I've always wanted to express my version of stuff like that with people. Just share my cool thoughts I come up with on a daily basis when I think of these shows, you know? It's real
So
fun.
you're taking Mighty Morphin on its own path. Do you plan on kind of having a Zed like character kind of show up? Because obviously Zed and Rita are married, so is there going to be like a lady Zed, or are you just going to leave Zed out of the picture because Zed kind of gets overused a little bit?
Uh, well, I did draw Zed in my audio drama style, just in case he was a fan demand.
Fair.
I don't really want to use him, but if people want it, I will put it in there because I've already designed it. Like I saw it coming. I was like, people are gonna wonder, what about Lord Zed? And I was like, well, I'll let them decide that. That's up to the fans, man.
See, I as much as I love Zed, I think Zed gets overdone just a little bit too much.
Right.
Personally. But yeah, I mean, so okay, you've got like other things that Rita did. Obviously, Rita made her own Power Ranger. Well, okay, she brainwashed someone to be a Power Ranger. Obviously, that's Tommy. Are we gonna have something similar happen, or are you gonna stray away from that and kind of focus on more other devious things your villain could do?
Well, um, so All right. The Mighty Morphin story that I have previously mentioned. It's different, but it happens similarly to the regular timeline, right? There are
Yes.
some things that do course correct. Like there's just some events that are canon events, if you want to call it that, right?
Yep.
So yes, there is a ranger that's going to unfortunately fall under a Retox's spell. And that actually is one of the episodes I have already written. So that's one of the actual upcoming episodes.
Cool.
Now, on who? I don't know. Figure it out, I guess. Speculate.
Okay, so one thing Mighty Morphin kind of did was, they etc etc is your team going to experience something similar as well, where they have to like upgrade themselves into a new power set, or are you going to not do that and just carry on being MMPR?
So, I planned on doing something similar actually as well. It's another canon event. I wanted to do different adaptations of Ninjetti and the samurai power that the Mighty Morphin gets that doesn't feel like samurai power, but it's supposed to be,
Yeah.
So yes, they will eventually upgrade or lose their powers and need more, or just upgrade. So, in fact, I have an entire timeline dedicated to specifically that and how the audio drama is going to eventually go entirely from series to series. I even have the titles named, and also I have my version of Ninjetti already designed, and my version of their samurai power already designed.
Awesome. I can't wait to. I think I've seen a picture of one of your ninjas. Actually, I believe. Have you shared that with like the Discord or something?
Oh, I probably put it on the Discord, yeah,
I
and
was going to
Instagram
say.
maybe.
I definitely think I've seen one of your ninja designs. So yeah, that's awesome. I kind of like how you're keeping major events, but you're kind of like twisting it in your own head to like the way that you want it. Interesting as well, because I don't listen to everything that everyone puts out, but I listen to yours. There's obviously Cosplay Dude and Micro Corner Strangers, and I think you're the only one out of all of us that I listen to, and my own, because obviously I do have my own stories as well. But you've kept the idea, but you're going down the original route at the same time. It's kind of like you're baking a cake, someone else's cake, but your own flavor. That's the best way I guess I could describe it.
Oh yeah,
And
that would be
I like it. And it stands out to me. Like I said, I love the Beetleborg. Well, like you introduced, like how the bad guys came to be. That was really cool. I think I just like the way you put it together. You can kind of feel just like, I don't know. It's almost like you could feel the guys just absolute turmoil, through how the person delivered their lines and how you edit it together and stuff. And then obviously when everything goes wrong, you kind of feel kind of bad for the guy. You kind of think like he did something wrong, but at the same time you feel like sad for him. And yeah, you kind of get it across. I think you do a decent job at it, to be fair.
Well, thanks. It's a mixture between my writing and my narrator and my voice actors, Like,
Yeah.
to be fair, it's not a one-man, adventure. I couldn't do it without the help of others, and they're very talented people, including yourself, obviously. And my narrator is peak level god tier narrator. Shout out to Real Crispy. I love Crispy. He's awesome. Me and him have known each other for a long time now, at least like 4 years or so. So yeah, man, I couldn't do it without others. The vibe you're feeling is a nice combination of my love into the writing, Crispy's love into the narrating, and everyone else having fun voicing characters.
Yeah, definitely. What do you think you're doing? Listening to this filth? You should be listening to the Zero to Hero podcast right this instant. It will give you the brain-numbing, blood-pumping thrill that drinking 12 espressos, 12 shots of vodka, and looking at a unicorn for the first time would give you. I swear to God, Billy and Jim pour their blood, their sweat, their tears, and the gold that they found in the Garden of Eden into their podcast. And you sit here, you're not listening to it. Are you insane? Go over to the Zero to Hero podcast now and listen to it. God damn it, I have to do everything around here. Duh. So, like I mentioned before, you're actually one of my voice actors, and I've actually brought one of your characters to life, which is obviously One Up, which is a mutant in my Marvel and DC crossover universe, and you're one of the mutants for hire. I've made your One Up character team up with 3 other boys, and they're all kind of like, you know, they're not X-Men, they're not Brotherhood, they're kind of just, you give them money, they'll do it, you know, sort of like a ragtag team, and yeah, I wanna hear how you kind of came up with One Up, and you can also explain what he does, what his mutant power is. I'll let you explain that too. But yeah, I wanna talk about him for a minute.
Sure. So, funny thing, One Up has kind of like an interesting origin. So, years and years ago, I was still broke, and I wanted to know how to tabletop, like play D&D, you know?
Yeah.
But I didn't know how to get a hold of the books and stuff without paying for it back then. Because I think back then the PDFs did exist for free, you know? So I was like, man, how do you build one? Because like I guess I'll just build one at home and then like run it and play it with friends and see if they like it. So I actually learned how to make a tabletop. And I'm really good at it, actually. I've made my own tabletops for many years now, starting with the first one I made, which was a comic book themed one called Writier Chronicles. And back then, I had ran a character because I had taught my brother how to run my game for me so I could play it as well, so I could indulge in my own game. I had to run a character that was essentially One Up. His name was One Up. And eventually I just thought he was just really cool to the point to where One Up is actually funny thing. One Up is my original Dragonhoardcomics character from my comic book company. I just felt like he needed to have more love, and he fits in a comic setting so well. I just let you just use him for the fan thing because I was like, I mean, he would fit with mutants. So that was that, you know. His powers. It came from the inspiration of, well, you know, there's people that can turn to water or fire or whatever, but how about somebody that can literally morph between every element, between gases, liquids, and solids, you know? And that was just that. That's what he can do, man. Like, he can shift into a giant chunk of titanium and then turn into a gas of mustard gas. He can drop back down into a puddle of blood. As long as it's a liquid, a gas, and a solid, he can turn into it.
Yeah. So when I was looking for, you know, Mutants for Hire was the first thing I did where I purposefully sought out other people. I didn't have voice actors before this. I didn't work for anyone before this. I worked with Cosplay Dude about some story ideas, but that's about it. And so I put it out there. I was like, guys, I'm looking for people to make their own mutant characters. They're not going to be X-Men. They're not going to be Brotherhood. And you came to me with One Up. And you said you'd voice in. You explained that, like, you know, he touches the material. He is the material. It's that simple. He can turn into literally any material. Literally, like you said, if it's a gas, it doesn't matter, but he can turn into it. And it's definitely given me some like fun scenes to come up with I've written a scene which I think is in the second part of the crossover. He goes to Wakanda, and there's they're fighting, and one of the Wakandan soldiers got a vibranium spear, and I have one up go up to him and go, "Hey, chuck in your spear real quick." So he just goes, "Why? It's just my vibranium spear." And he's like, "Yeah, that's the point. Pass it over." Touches it, becomes vibranium, and I have one up like, "Yeah, okay, this works," because then he's full blown bodied vibranium. And I have some really good ideas later down the line with one up and his ability to turn into, different things. And you voice him really well as well. Your voice acting is definitely really good.
Thank you.
Because you're also my Joker, and that I couldn't tell you if you put your Joker and one up voices together. I wouldn't say you're the same person.
That's the goal,
So I like your Joker a lot, and yeah, I'm definitely, I don't know, I guess the word is jealous, because like the Joker's my favorite DC villain, and the way that you do him is just like it's so close to Mark Hamill. It's really good. You also sometimes sound like Jack Nicholson. Every now and then, this Jack Nicholson like vibe to you.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm an actual amateur actor and voice actor and amateur filmmaker outside of fan stuff. And, just like most legitimate voice actors, you eventually learn that it's nice to be able to copy voices, but sometimes you just got to be able to do your own thing, And like every other Joker voice actor, that actually got jobs with DC, they understand the very thing I did, which was do the same thing, but your own spin on it, Like, it's okay to sound a certain way, but make sure you sound like your own version of that character. So, yeah, ironically, my character does sound a lot like Mark, but if you think about it, so did, what's his name, Tom Baker? Is it Tom Baker? The guy who voiced Joker for the Arkham Origins game. He also sounds like Mark, right?
Yeah.
But not quite, And then you also said you heard Jack. Well, it's because it's not quite that voice because it's not meant to be. It's just my version of what that sounds like. And it just so happened to be very similar, but its own unique flavor, which makes it all the more special,
Yeah, no, it definitely works. And that's kind of what I wanted to do at Finster. I took I listened to Finster over and over and over and over again. I was like, well, I'm never going to be able to sound like Finster. And then I think I saw artwork or something of what you're doing with the Power Rangers. I was like, but he's kind of doing his own thing with the Rangers. Like, okay, let me do what I would be if I was Finster in the Power Rangers TV show. How would I do it? That's kind of how I went with it, and that's how we ended up with Finster that you have.
And it worked phenomenally,
Well, thank you. I'll take that. So I wanted to bring up. You've actually mentioned it. You have her in comic book. I want you to kind of explain what your comic book is, what that's about, how that came to be.
All right. So, ever since I was in junior high, I thought about making my own comic books. Honestly, back then I was worried because even then, like, over 10 years ago, like way, way, way back, I'm like 30. Stan Lee back then even was really old. He always looked old, Like, I'm glad he lived longer than I thought he was going to. But to be honest with you, man, I was worried for the comic industry because everything seemed to be going so weird. And I felt like if Stan Lee croaked, things were going to get worse,
Yeah.
And I was like, man, I wish I could just make my own comics so I wouldn't have to be heartbroken all the time and I can just be satisfied with my own content. Well, then I was like, wait, why don't I? So I went on the path of trying to figure out how to do that. Unfortunately, back then, there wasn't as much stuff as there is now to make content. There was little to nothing, no information. Comic-Cons were just beginning to be a thing. Like, they weren't even like mainstream anything,
Yeah.
So to be fair, we didn't have technology like we do now, and I did not know how to make a comic book. So it was a very, very long time before I could ever reach a point in time when it was possible, like more possible, like nowadays. But it gave me enough time to create like the writing aspect of the characters, flesh them out, and be satisfied with them over time. So because it took so long, I ended up making and writing and designing over 50 comic book characters
Damn.
over the years, and I was like, you know what? I think this is a decent amount of characters to start up my own comic universe, you know? So then I contemplated, well, what character is going to be my opener character, like the character that's going to be my first issue, the first comic release for my company. And I didn't expect it to be Clock, to be fair. Clock was like not even on my radar to put as my first character to release, but he ended up being the one I released. So I was in production hell trying to get my first comic out, and it was going to be Fluxwave, a female superhero named Fluxwave. And I had finally got a comic book cover created for it, fully put together, you know?
Mm.
And COVID hit. And I was like, shit. So COVID kind of set back a lot of my comic creation, and then the comic book industry did collapse, you know, with that whole pencils down situation, and then that one company that used to distribute the comics just kind of didn't do it no more, and I was like, oh shit. So Fluxwave is still in production hell to this day because of that, and it's not easy, you know, because I don't do everything myself. Um, like everyone who does make a legitimate comic book, you will realize that you can't do everything yourself. You can, but it's not easy, nor is it really worth it. And let me explain before people get their pitchforks. Right. It takes a team, like an actual company team, to make a comic.
Yeah.
Because, like Todd McFarlane said, whenever you're interviewing to be in a comic book company, you have to be able to do all five things: write a story, draw the thing, um, be the letterer for it, make the cover, and color it. And then they'll look at all five of these aspects and say, well, his coloring sucks, but he draws real well, but his writing shit. So I'm hiring him just to draw. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's one of those things where you're not going to hit every mark with an A plus. It's very rare for somebody to be good at all five, you know? And I knew this. So I write and design everything and draw everything and whatnot. But then I hand it over to one of my other team members, and then they polish it up, make it look good, make it digital, and then someone else makes the covers, and then another person colors them if they're in color. So it takes a whole handful of people to make my comics the way they are. But that's just how the business is, you know? And Stan Lee knew that. I mean, Stan Lee worked with Steve Ditko. He worked with all sorts of people. There was a whole board of people that worked with him. He didn't do everything himself. Not really, you know?
Yeah.
And when you realize that and mature about that, you'll be able to make your own comic better, you know? So I was glad I could figure that out because I didn't want to make that mistake of thinking I can just do everything and then fall flat. So FlexWave was in production hell for a while. Still is. And I really wanted to push out a character. So I was like, damn. You know?
Yeah.
And I thought about it and I was like, well, I guess Clock. I laughed because it was a joke. Because Clock is kind of like a silly character. To be fair, I literally created him to be kind of silly because of like time puns and old school Silver Age or Bronze Age even feel of how comics were. um, he definitely is like a somewhat parody character back then, so I was like, I mean, I like his design. I just don't know. But someone else said, I don't know, man, that looks really cool, and I kind of like the time pun campiness. So I was like, all right. So I went with Clock, and because he's like an old dude, his aesthetic would fit a black and white comic series, which is something you rarely see nowadays. Most things are in color. So I was like, okay, so he has like an aesthetic to him, you know? And then it started to grow on me. Well, yeah, I guess I'll push Clock out first, you know? And that's what I ended up doing. I ended up pushing the first issue of Clock out. Um, Unfortunately, the first issue is a short comic. It's like a introduction comic. It's not very long. It's not like the standard 24 pages or anything like that, because it was my launch product, you know?
Yeah.
Also because comics are expensive, yo. Like when you're creating a comic, that stuff's not cheap. Like, boy, comics are not cheap. Even if you do most things yourself, the financial hump it takes to actually make sure everything's done right is ridiculous. So thousands of dollars, man. Like an average comic is anywhere from 3 to 4 grand to make. So keep that in mind. So when I realized that, I was like, I do not have that kind of money. So the first issue ended up being a short comic because that's all the money I had at the time. That I put all my money I possibly had into that, and it turned out really good. People actually are wanting a second issue, and the second issue is being made because people actually bought out every comic I had of the first issue. Like my whole stacks got sold. Like that stuff's gone. Like I'm empty. There's no more first issues of Clock. So I can make more issues, but like the fact that they sold out was wild to me. So I was really excited. You know, the second issue's comic cover is done. It's just it's in the middle of production hell at the moment due to finances, and I had to fire one of my previous team members. And I've been struggling to find the next person to fill that slot. So I'm also running into problems that most other comic companies probably ran into when they first started, but because they're multi-million-dollar companies now, they don't give a shit because they can just fire somebody and hire somebody just like that.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah, that's happened.
What?
I said, yeah, that's definitely happened.
And also, they can push out whatever they want. They don't care it's 3 to 4 grand a comic because they have so much money because they've already made it. You know, they've already hit gold. You know, so they can push out 1% of their comic stock to stores and still make enough money back to make comics for the next 10 decades. Also, I'm definitely not the same because I'm starting out, and to be honest, I didn't understand how expensive comics were going to be until it was too late. And even then, I'm willing to do it because you got to spend money to make money, right? And also, I'm doing it for the passion of the fact that I just wanted my own stories to be pushed out and for people to be inspired by me like I was inspired by DC and Stanley.
Yeah, that, when it comes to Stanley's one of my like idols. I adored Stanley, and I think he's inspired a lot of people. But I also think, like you said, it's a process. It's not easy. It's long. It takes time, and like this is why I actually have a channel which is one of the Tiger Tales channels, but all my original chapters go up there because I did a lot of research. My mother's tried to get a book out, and I saw how much time and effort and editors have to get involved, and you don't know where to distribute your books and stuff. So I just went, do you know what? F this. I'm just gonna put it on YouTube. I've done all my fan fictions and all my fan stuff. Why not do it on my original stuff? So I do have a channel where people can go listen to my original storylines, my original content. And it's just like I don't know. I kind of saw how long and annoying it was, and I guess I just didn't want to go through that myself when it came to my own original story stuff. I have wanted to do a comic book, and like I kind of juggle between, do I bother? Is there a point? Are people going to read it? Sort of, juggle. So I'm currently there at the minute.
For sure, man.
What's it like? Did you
Hello?
hello?
You cut out for a second. What? What's it like?
Um,
What?
what's it like? Do you ever feel like you're gonna? Do you ever feel like you want to give up? You should just stop. You should just put the pen down and just give up, or is your drive strong enough that you're just gonna keep going?
Man, it has been a roller coaster between both because, like, I understood people were going to be upset the comic was short. I always warned them before they bought it was short, and why. But even while still doing that, I actually received quite a bit of hate. And it was very deterring, you know. Some people didn't care, they loved it, they wanted more. That was very inspiring, but a lot of times the production hell aspect, not having enough, um, trying to work with others and it being difficult, having to let people go because they're being difficult or rude or awful or not doing the correct things. I don't know, man. It is very deterring, especially when you realize that comics, a lot of people had the same idea. I'm not the only person in existence who had this idea. You know,
Yeah.
there's so many people that make their own comics now, and it's like, the market for independent comics is actually very vast. There's so many people wanting to do the same thing. So, um, um, I don't know if I recommend it. Obviously, pursue passions. Always pursue passions. Because then you still try it even if you fail. But there are plenty of times when I'm wondering if my efforts were even worth it. Because I've been working on these comics for over 10 years with the writing aspect and planning them and designing them. So I'm so far into wanting to at least try them and willing to spend the money to do it that I'm just gonna do that and see what happens. But there are days when I'm like definitely losing hope because of how ridiculous it seems to think that people will like my stories enough to want to buy them. Especially when people, the way how money tight is right now, how tight it is because of inflation and a bunch of other stuff, people will resort to buying things that they personally want to and versus things they don't really know or care to. And when you think about the fact that when you're trying to push like a new thing at somebody, right? Well, they know who Batman is. Okay. Batman's been around for a very long time. So, and they can buy him cheap because DC can afford for it to be cheap because they have so much money, right? So they look at Batman's comic, it's like $6. They look at my comic, it's like 20. They're like, I know who Batman is. I know I'm gonna like that. I don't know who Clock is, and that's a lot of money. No, thank you. I'm gonna go buy Batman. You know? So
Yeah.
sometimes people won't even give the comic a time of day because the price scares them. But really, man, like $3 to $4 a comic, I gotta make the money back to make another one. you know? And I tried making them $10 at first, but I did the math and I was gonna be in the negative even if I sold my stuff at $10 as a comic. It had to be a little bit more than that. So I tried my best to be as cheap as possible with it so people would still be interested, but $20 was about as low as I could go. So it's just hard, man. It really is.
Yeah, it sounds like a trek. It definitely sounds like a bit of a battle. So let's say, um you manage let's say several years down the line you manage to get your comic book up there, characters are out and stuff. What's kind of like the end goal? Are you wanting to do things like, multiverse stuff, teams of heroes? Like what's kind of like what's your end point?
Okay, so I actually have a very interesting thing about that. I made specific rules for myself for my own comics so that I would avoid these issues. Um, I'm never going to do the multiverse of my comics. Period. That is a overdone thing lately in the comic community to the point to where people are getting tired of the multiverse. People hate it at this point. Like people love it, but they hate it too. You know?
Yep.
Like what does it matter if Batman dies? There's another Batman elsewhere that they're still watching or listening to or reading. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter. Like the multiverse makes things so unpersonal. You know, like it's a way to make more money, sure, but you're no one cares anymore. There's no more stakes because they have it in their mind. Well, okay, Batman's still alive in Earth 2, you know.
Yeah.
So I did not want to run into the chaos that is the multiverse with my comics. And on top of that, I do not want to mess with time travel whatsoever. Time travel also, even though I have a solid plan on how I deal with multiverse and time travel, like I explained, I don't want to do it because it gets ridiculous after a while. Because once you do multiverse and time travel, things become so over the top that you're stuck having to overtop yourself more as you go for it to be more interesting because you've already done something so drastically interesting. So time travel itself makes things too complicated, and sometimes writers make mistakes when they write time travel stories, and that leads to plot holes.
Yeah,
Very
with time travel stories as well, everyone kind of does it differently. You know, you've got the time travel that, you know, if you change anything in the past, it'll affect the future. Avengers Endgame kind of explained it as, you know, you time travel, whatever happens after is doesn't change anything. It's now different. You've now, you know, your past is now your future, whatever the fuck they explained it, you know, and stuff like that. Everything does time travel differently, so it's kind of hard to, you know, fill in the gaps and all that stuff.
well, not only that, but sometimes it falls flat. Sometimes you write something that contradicts yourself, or people just don't like it because they're already seeing the same thing from everybody else. You know,
True.
so I don't want to do these things. Now, what does that mean for my characters? Well, boldly and wholeheartedly, it means that if Clock ever dies in my comics, he's dead. Just no cap, gone. So, and people will think, oh, haha, no, he'll be back, multiverse or time travel, or they'll just write a different story with him anyway. Like, no, Clock is dead. And once that finally settles in, it'll create controversy. And controversy, whether negative or positive, is very good for business. So, in my opinion, being the one comic book company that might just not do that stuff and actually have deaths matter and actually are permanent will be very bold. I get that. It could ruin the stories for sure because people might get mad enough not to buy them anymore. But I'll still feel good about myself for sticking to my guns on making deaths matter in comics. So that is what's going to happen. Now, if someone dies and someone else takes up the mantle, though, that is my loophole on how a character can still exist. Is if someone is like a descendant or they are inspired by that character and then they do it their own way. That's the only way I'll ever continue a character, and even then it's not the same character. It's just someone else donning the mantle.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I think when it comes to, like you said, you're sticking to your guns and things. See, I think that's a big problem with Marvel and DC, isn't it? Like, so you know, let's use Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. Wanda, everyone thinks Wanda's dead, but it's comic books. It's based off Marvel. She ain't dead. She's coming back. Everyone knows this. Whether it might be a different version of Wanda. It might be the same Wanda. Who the fuck cares? We all know she ain't staying dead. I mean, they killed off Vision, but then we got White Vision. And like, I think the only death that people would be pissed off about if he came back would be Tony. did a set of comic books where, like, Wally West was a black kid, so they had to bring back the white one, so they made it so he's entrapped in the Speed Force the entire time. I'm like, crap. And so, like, yeah, they can't keep people dead, they can't keep people away, so they find a way to bring it all together. And so the fact that you're wanting to stick to your guns, not do all that, just keep it, grounded, I like it.
Yeah, so if I say or show in my comic that, hey, Clock shares the same universe as, or same timeline, because it's all the same universe. It's never going to be a different universe, so same Earth, same universe. So if I show someone crossing over with Clock, then that's definitively a person that exists within that same continuity. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the reason why I say that is some of my characters are in different cities or different periods of time, but they're never going to time travel. You know what I'm saying? So I have a character that's set in the future of my comic timeline, right? But because he's in the future, he won't run into someone like Clock or Fluxwave because they're already dead. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So if my comics ever show somebody else talking to someone else that's another character, then that's definitive. People will know, hey, that's canon. That's never going to change. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Nothing about whatever I come out with will ever be complicated. It'll just be fun, exciting, and leaving people wanting more, hopefully.
So
Is there going to be team ups? Yes.
when it comes to your comic books, do you have plans to do like villains comic books or like anti-heroes, or are you just going to stick with heroes who have bad guys and kind of like stick with just the hero side?
So Clock currently has 2 to 3 villains that are introduced into the first 3 issues or whatever, right? And I'm not always going to have just hero comics. That's a correct assumption. I'm going to have anti-hero comics villains or people that are just considered neutral even. But in my opinion, the way that I'm actually thinking about doing it for sure on top of that is, I think about the character itself, right? Which, by the way, I know I'm all over the place. I'm just very passionate about what I'm talking about, so I'm kind of just rambling, but it's important ramble. So uh so I look at a character, right, and I'm like, is this main character material? Like, is this person so fascinating that they can carry their own story in their own issue? And I'm like, maybe not. Like, if a character can't, in my opinion, stand on their own, then they'll never have their own separate single issues. They'll just always be a part of someone's comics that already does stand out. If that makes sense. So, like, Clock is interesting enough to carry his own weight in his own series. And there are some characters in his story that are very cool if they're in his story, but probably would not hold up if they had their own comic. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I look at it like, is this character fascinating enough? And that's how I'm going to do it. So is there going to be characters with their own series? Of course. They're not always going to be heroes. But sometimes when it boils down to it, it's going to be uneven because most of my heroes are going to be more compelling than my villains, or some villains are going to be cooler than others. It really just depends on, is this character worth making their own series about? Or are they just more of a, they only exist because this other character needs to beat them up, or team up with them even. Kind of like, oh, sorry.
I was just gonna say I kind of like your thought pattern. I think Marvel and DC don't follow the same thought pattern because they give comic books any character, and sometimes it's unnecessary and unneeded. So I kind of like the way you're thinking.
Well, yeah, as bold and egotistical as it sounds, man, for a long time, I've always been confident that I know what to do and what not to do because DC and Marvel give me a good template. They give me a good example of this works, this doesn't. And I kind of know how fans think because I'm a fan, you know? So I know what I need to do to make things more compelling and more interesting, and hopefully it'll work out. Now, I'm not saying that 100% that's true. I could be wrong. My comics could never go anywhere, and I'm just a hack, But like, I'd like to think my writing and my passion and the way I build my characters will speak for itself, because I do a similar formula to my fan projects by adding my own little flavor to things. So honestly, man, like you said, it's a good idea because I just knew it was going to be, because I've
Yeah.
seen like DC and Marvel make those mistakes, like you said, and it's like, yeah, man, like, what character is a good example of what they probably just shouldn't have had their own comic. Um, hmm, I know I can think of one. Oh shit. Um, Mr. Mitzel Spitalik or whatever. He's
Mr.
really
Mispiklik.
he's really fascinating, but if he had his own series, it'd just be ridiculous and probably wouldn't sell. And if it did, it would only be for the shock jock value. It's kind of a character that isn't compelling unless he's in someone else's story. Now, I'm not saying he's not a good character. I'm saying that he fits in a more of a story narrative of like he's the thing that's coming to ruin your day because you weren't expecting it, and the element of surprise and his powers and how he functions works better when he's playing off a character. He's a good character to bring in to mess with your main character that has their series. If you gave him his own series, yeah, it'd be interesting, but it'd be hard to do and hard to get it to stay going just because he's not really something to really hold a story on his own without playing off something else. You know?
Yeah, I think another good example, and I'm gonna get a lot of slack for this off some people, is Spider Gwen
Oh
because
damn.
her comic books do not do well in sales at all. She's had like 3 to 4 major storylines. One of them is her introduction. One of them is a multiverse storyline where she goes around and meets herself, alternate versions of herself. And the only reason why that got popular is because one Gwen said to the other Gwen that she has a nice ass. And that's the only reason why it got popular, is because there's one panel of that and things like this. But when she's in Spideyverse storylines, when she's hanging out with Miles, when she's like helping Peter do something, she's a kick-ass character. She's really cool. She's smart. She's interesting. She's sassy. But then when she's in her own comic book, she kind of just falls flat.
You know, people are gonna shoot me for this too, man. But like, I hate to say it, but Miles was in the same boat not too long ago, like 5, 6, maybe 7, 8 years ago, when Miles was first done, and his comics ran for a long time, and nobody cared. Like, I mean, there's some people that did. I get that, but Miles, his comics did not sell well. Like, they were all right, and it was because Ultimate Spider-Man Peter had died, and Miles took his place, but people weren't ready for Peter to go. And Miles's stories were just dark and brutal and weird, and people just couldn't relate. It took a long time for them to figure out what formula works for Miles. Nowadays, Miles be eating good because they finally found a formula that works. But ironically, his stories that are working require other characters for it to be interesting. And that's what's the takeaway that we're saying here is like there's just some characters that are not that interesting on their own, you know?
With Miles, when he first came to be, it was because Spider-Man died. That did not work. But I think people have accepted Miles now is because they're going down the route of Miles to Peter is Dick Grayson to Bruce Wayne. It's the
Well,
it's the sidekick. When Miles works as Peter's sidekick, he works better as a character.
yeah, they decided to kill Peter, but then not kill Peter, which is also the other issue we have with these things. But yeah,
Yeah.
he needs the Spider Verse for him to be interesting, and I think that's real sad. That kind of sucks.
I
But
th-
I
I th-
do like those stories.
I think the one time Miles and Peter just are fantastic is the Insomniac games on the PlayStation, because there is no multiverse. It is just those two, and I think that's the best version of Miles and Peter that we've gotten.
For
But
sure, because the comics came out with the Thor version of Miles, and that was just insulting to the culture he comes from. Like that comic was just awful.
yeah. So I understand where you're coming from when you say, some characters don't need to, be in the limelight.
Exactly.
Yeah. So one more question before, because I just realized we haven't spoke about one character in your Power Rangers before we go. You've done something with Alpha rather intriguing compared to what Alpha is normally.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
wanted you to explain that a bit before we end the episode.
All right. So Alpha. Ooh. All right. Well, it's actually kind of simple. It's a little bit heartwarming even. Alpha has always had a good place in everybody's hearts who love Power Rangers. Alpha has been a great mascot, a great friend, a great thing to grow up with and experience. Like Alpha is just a real treat. I've not met one person that hates Alpha. No matter which Alpha it was. You know, um, and his origins of his character is very fascinating. The fact that the people from Illinois create Alphabots is really cool. And Alpha himself has always been a very interesting character. With the Once and Always special, Alpha had such strong like tendencies and strength in his like heart that he was able to try to push Billy away while being taken over by Rita. Like the fact that Alpha still had enough control over his body to try to yeet Billy out the room before he fully changed is pretty inspiring to me. I think Alpha has always had like just power about him. It's not necessarily like a raw strength. It's more so like he's always just been. He has like a strong heart, man. Alpha has the soul of a Power Ranger. In my opinion, out of all the robots that have had sentience that became Rangers, why didn't Alpha? Alpha is more worthy than anybody I could ever think of or dream of. Like Alpha is worthy of having that power and being a protector, hands down. So I wanted my Alpha to be more capable. So my version of Alpha was more of an actual fighting robot. Like he was built like more humanoid to actually be a combat kind of living robot, like a living android situation where he is taller and more limber and can handle a fight, because really all Alpha is missing is just a better body. On top of that, Alpha's personality alone, man, he's just worthy, dude. Like that's all I can really say. He's worthy. And he should have been a Power Ranger, always, you know. And he never was. And I thought that was just sad because, like, who else has ever devoted their life as much as Alpha has to the Power Rangers, to their cause, to defending Earth, to helping others? Alpha is just perfect to be a Power Ranger. So I wanted him to represent the color that's never used because he's never used. It was too perfect. So boom, bam, I made Alpha Ranger. Controversy, sure, but I think it was acceptable controversy given the situation.
Yeah, I like the fact they made Alpha Ranger. I think it's a unique take. No one's really thought about it. Like you said, there are plenty of robots in Power Rangers. A lot of the robots are Power Rangers as well. I mean, how Operation Overdrive is a Ranger from the get-go. And
then Beast Morphers with the Silver Ranger.
yeah, and then people consider Robo Knight from Megaforce a Ranger, which makes no sense to me. And yeah, I like the fact that we have, you've taken a character that's an ally through and through. He's in, or a version of him is in Mighty Morphin all the way till in space. He turns up for the Forever Red crossover. He's the Once and Always special and things. And yeah, you made him into, like you said, you changed him up a bit because obviously he's got to be fit to fight, but that's about it. But yeah, I wanted to bring that up before we ended the episode because I like what you've done with Alpha. I think he's pretty cool.
Yeah, I still have way more to talk about, so you're gonna have me again, man, because I did just drop my version of Ivan Ooze.
Yes, I saw, and yes, you will return. This is definitely a continuation thing. Me and you will have to talk about that in a later date, and you can come back and we can talk about the thing because you have other stuff that aren't Power Ranger related. I wanted to bring up your comic book because obviously that's something you're trying to push out and stuff. But yeah, there's other stuff I wanted to talk about, but we'll definitely have you on another day. I'm now uploading once a week. Instead of once a fortnight, so I'm definitely going to need people to come back and come say hi. So you'll definitely come back at some point. So I'm going to say this is your chance to tell people where to find you, whatever socials you have that you want people to go check out, anything like that, anything you want to plug. This is your chance. The floor is yours.
Alrighty, and thank you for having me, man. So
Yeah, anytime, boy.
all those who want to find me, you can find me on Instagram at JDragonheart. You can find the audio drama at YouTube with Mighty Morphin Universe 3072 audio drama. Yes, it's really long, but it works. Same thing for the Beetleborg situation. Just add audio drama and Universe 3072. You should be able to find it. My TikTok is the Brown Morphin Master. If you want to reach me there. Anyone's interested in roles, auditions for any kind of project I'm doing, just hit me up on any of these socials. Same thing to hit me up through those for my comics if you're interested in buying one and supporting an indie comic book creator and my passion to hopefully get my stories out there. I do more than just audio dramas. My fan projects and original projects are anywhere from an audio drama to a live action to a web series to a tabletop. I'm pretty much hitting every media format I can with my projects, depending on the project. I even have something really special coming soon. I can't mention right now, but it's definitely going to be a head turner. So hit me up if you want to, or at least check out my content. I appreciate your support and I love you all. If anyone wants to do crossovers, hit me up for that. I actually have a guy crossing over with me, which I can talk about next time since I have run out of time.
Well, the person you're talking about, I believe I know it is. He's also crossing over my stuff as well. And me and you have also had conversations about your brown morphing master kind of meeting with my silver morphing master. So there'll be a crossover between me and you at some point. And one of the things I want to bring up next time, you've also said I could use when it comes to DC. So we'll mention that next time. I think that'd be kind of cool. So yeah,
For
guys.
sure.
Thank you very much for tuning into this episode, of course. Big thank you and shout out to Jay for coming on. Again, he will come on. There's more to talk about. It's just sadly we've run out of time. Of course, make sure you follow us on all the podcast platforms, Spotify and all that jazz. If you're watching us on YouTube, subscribe to there. Check out Tiger Tales and all the other Tiger Tales channels because you'll find my stories. You'll find Jay voice acting on those channels as well. Of course, make sure you check out Mark the Cornish Ranger, Nursery Comics, and Cosplay 267, Zero Hero, and the If You Give It Out a podcast. Of course, we shall see you guys next time.
This podcast is a production of the Three Ranger Bros Studios, in association with Zero to Hero, the podcast.